adolescent eating disorders. This would be good for you, Risa, because you've got a little one coming up, a little girl coming up. What is she, 6, 7? 5, 5, okay. All righty, so it's good to see all of you, and talking about eating disorders is, it's a subject that's been near and dear to my heart for years and years, really all my life, because I've had an eating disorder all my life. And I just want to report, I asked Misty, I said, do you think I need to say this on there? Do y'all ever have mornings that you wake up and you feel fat? Shake your head if you ever have a fat feeling. Well, I felt fat this morning. I'm not feeling as fat now since I said it out loud. But that's what, oh, good morning, Bradley. There he is. But it is, in saying I feel fat, that's not a feeling. That is not a feeling. So I have to stop and ask myself, what is the feeling that I'm feeling? It's not, I say I'm feeling fat. Well, I haven't gained an ounce overnight. And I will say this, I am not fat, I'm not overweight. This is old stuff that's been in my brain since I was 4 years old. 4 years old. And I will say I do have a battle eating disorder. I am a binge eater and a bulimic. And, not only have I had an eating disorder, my 3 daughters and myself are writing a book on mothers and daughters. Can you imagine that? And from all 3 perspectives. And I was working yesterday on it all day, and I really realized, and I've known this for years, that my mother had an eating disorder, but her alcoholism overshadowed the eating disorder. But I got to thinking, my mother would go from 98 pounds up to 220 pounds and everything in between. That is an eating disorder. So, and I have, I've had an eating disorder since age 4, and then I have 2 daughters that are in recovery from, I have 3 daughters, but I have 2 that are in recovery from eating disorders. So I want to talk about adolescent eating disorders, how to recognize them, and really what it's about. And I was thinking, and like Rissa said, her little girl is 5. Eating disorders are getting more and more prevalent and going down into the younger ages all of the time. 5, 6, 7, and a lot of it is, I think, due to what they see on TV, what they see in magazines, and there's a lot of talk about weight and being thin, and actually that started way before any of them were ever thought about, before any adolescent that's alive today even knew about. The eating disorder boom started with Twiggy. I don't know if y'all remember Twiggy. Twiggy was a model from Europe, and she was that big around. She, weighed around 80, 85 pounds. She had the body of a 12-year-old boy. And that became the goal for every adolescent girl and some adults, to be that thin. So I believe that's still a carryover from that era. And, the kids today don't even know about Twiggy. I'm sure, unless their parents have told them or their grandparents. But that started a trend of how important it was to be thin. And then there was a survey done with children in the 5th and 6th grade. 5th and 6th grade. And the survey was to write down the 5 things that you fear the most. 5th and 6th graders, that would be probably 11, 12 years of age. And the top number 1 of that 5 was being fat. Being fat. Kids have a fear of being fat because they watched other kids being teased and ridiculed and put down and not chosen for teams and blah blah blah, you know. So that fear of fat is I'm sure is as prevalent today as it has ever been. I don't know that, but I've noticed when I'm out in a crowd, I've noticed uh, I'm a I'm a people watcher, and we were at a little down at Coleman, Texas, Friday night at a wonderful. We go try to go. We've been twice. I mean, I've been several times. But anyway, I love that little rodeo. But what I love the best is people watching. And what I see, we were sitting on the second row, and so everyone walked in front of us, and there was so much obesity out there, not only in adults, but in children and adolescents. Now, when they talk about eating disorders, what most people want to talk about or they consider an eating disorder is anorexia, which it is absolutely an eating disorder. It is the number one uh, top psychiatric diagnosis. It is the number one, has the highest mortality rate of any of the psychiatric diagnosis. So, yes, anorexia is very, very serious. It is very serious. And so, in doing this talk, you go and research. Of course, I don't do my research. I mean, I've been doing this for uh, many years. I did personal research, and then I watched my children, have eating disorders, and then I've been trained in the eating disorder field. But I don't guess we ever learn everything about whatever we're, focused on. But I went over some signs and symptoms of eating disorders, and what they really focus on is the anorexia. And there is a higher rate of the obese children, and there's very little talked about it. Do you know the Medical Association doesn't even see that childhood obesity is that they don't call it an eating disorder? What do you think, Bradley? Do they call it an eating disorder? What they call it is being overweight. Are you going to say something?
I was going to say it's interesting now. There used to not be medication for it, appropriate medication for it. One of the things they say for DSM and diagnosable mental disorders is most of them require medication. And so if it doesn't require medicine, they don't diagnose it a disorder. So now that there is the Wegovy and all the other things that they can now prescribe medicine for it, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a transition to that
Yeah.
in the coming updates to the DSM. But in the past,
Right.
they typically don't diagnose it unless they can prescribe medication for it. And so because it's about money at times,
Absolutely.
unfortunately, not about the
Absolutely.
person. So there's
And and binge eating. There's never been anything about being overweight, obesity, and they finally added binge eating, and so uh, which binge eating is. That's the only diagnosis that is there that insurance will pay for obesity. So I'm not going to get into all of that. What I want to talk about, but thanks, Bradley, because it. What I want to say before I forget it, this what we're talking about is not a behavior. It's not a behavior. It is a disease, and it is a mental and emotional disease and a physical. It's physical, mental, and emotional. And, people can treat the physical part till hell freezes over. And until you get into that mental and emotional side, there's not going to be long term recovery. And this even goes into for adolescents. So, adolescents, there's one word to describe uh, eating disorders, particularly for anorexics. Well, for any of us, but particularly for anorexics. and that is control. It's the big C. They feel like they can't control what's going on in their life. They can't control mom and dad. They can't control the mean girls at school or the kids that pick on them or whatever, or they can't control. But what they can control is what goes into their mouth. And it's usually, that's usually the beginning of anorexia. I want to give you a little story, and I've said this before. We were trained early on. I was trained early on, years ago. And I didn't like it because I'm the mother of two young women, well, with eating disorders. I didn't like this information. And what we were, and I do agree with it to a certain extent. But anyway, what we were taught that eating disorders, primarily, particularly with women, is that mother-daughter struggle. And it can contribute to an eating disorder, but it doesn't cause it. It can't control it. But, as parents, we can contribute to, what goes on in our children's lives. But we went through, as mothers, we went through thinking that we were giving our children eating disorders. What they pick up is our behavior. So I want to, so there is that mother-daughter struggle that is very valid, and I do talk about that mother-daughter struggle because sometimes it's hard for daughters to leave home. Sons are just raised to grow up and leave home. I mean, across the board, they grow up, they're celebrated, and they leave home. Daughters, a lot of times, are not. It's just an unspoken rule. You can grow up and you can get married, but don't leave home. Don't go too far. Don't go too far away. And particularly if you have a dominating mother. So that's all I want to say about mothers. But what we are seeing is that, parental parents can make a contribution to these diseases, but they do not cause them. They do not cause them, but they can absolutely help with the recovery. We're learning more and more about how to involve the family, and I'm going to talk about that a little later. Okay, so let's get right into, I want to describe what anorexia, I'm going to start with anorexia. It's these are the signs and behaviors that you look for. It's self-imposed starvation. It is the intense fear of gaining weight and a distorted body image. An anorexic looks in the mirror and they see themselves as overweight. They may weigh 85 pounds and they see 185 or 200. They have that distorted body image. And so that body image work is very important in working with eating disorder people, even adolescents. And so adolescents and with anorexia, like I said, often see themselves as overweight, even when they're dangerously underweight. So the behaviors, the key signs to look for as parents is severe restriction of the food intake. Now this calls for parents to pay attention to your children. Now, I don't see anyone on here. Well, yeah, I do have some parents that are parenting younger kids. Families stay busy. They, a lot of times, don't even have meals together. There's this event, there's that game, there's this, there's that, there's something else. And I'm not throwing bouquets at myself, and who am I to say? Because, like I said, our home was a seedbed for eating disorders. But one thing I did stress, and we had it, and we still do, and that is regular mealtime. And we had dinner every night as a family, whether they wanted to or not. So anyway, restriction of food intake, excessive exercise, preoccupation with weight, food, and dieting. Now, I will tell you, this all has a starting place. And when they start with your adolescents, how it starts is that they might get on the scale one day and see that they've gained a few pounds. And then that scares them, and so they go on a diet. They start restricting their food. And then they get back on the scale and they look and they've lost some weight. And it changes that brain chemistry. Oh, it's a high. They get excited over it. And so they restrict a little more. I mean, and this is over a period of time, but they'll restrict a little more, get back on the scales, and they've lost. I want to tell you, with adolescents, it doesn't take long for them to get into full-blown anorexia. It's not over a long period of time. Now, they may have the disease over a long period of time, but it doesn't take long for that weight to get compromised, particularly if they start at a normal weight. So preoccupation with weight, food, and dieting. And I want to say this about it, is a lot of your anorexics come out of homes where the mother is focused on her weight or is either overweight. My daughter, that Kim, y'all all know Kim, that's recovering anorexic, she said as a little girl, she didn't eat because she thought that her mother needed the food more than she did. Children get real skewed in their minds and they make up what reality is for them. And, of course, I weighed upward to, 275, 280, 287. I was morbidly obese. And Kim and her eating disorder started at a very early age. And so she, in her little mind, thought, well, mother needs the food more than I do. And so parents play a big role in the eating disorder. Now, I do not want you to hear, those of you that's listening to this on however means that you're listening to it, I want you to hear this is a no-fault disease. You did not cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it, and you can contribute to it. And so when mothers are preoccupied with their own bodies and their own weight loss, and I was all the time, and I would lose 100 pounds, 120 pounds, and I was either losing weight or gaining weight my entire life with my children. They never knew what size their mother was going to be. And there was a big preoccupation around our house about food. I restricted my kids' food. Now, I cooked 3 balanced meals a day, nothing in between. I portioned out their food. I kept a lock on the freezer. When my kids are here, they're all sitting around the table and laughing and telling childhood stories. They always bring this up, how I locked them out of any, binge foods. And then at night, I'd get up and I held the key and I'd go in and eat half what was in the freezer, sweet stuff and all that I'd gotten for their lunches. I would eat them. I would eat frozen food because I was such a severe binge eater, compulsive overeater. So parents can make an influence with children as far as, because they're watching you. They are watching you. Do not have any doubt about that. Kids are watching you. And mothers do play a big part, can play a big part in it, particularly if they're very weight conscious, if they're always on a diet, if they're, will ask, is my butt too big? Do I look fat in this? They'll ask their children that. And so it can be like a way to live in some families. And then some have what we call father hunger, where the father a lot of times can be alcoholics, work addicts. They're not, don't have a lot of involvement in the raising of a child. Maybe they live there, but they have an absent, and that child will start having what we call father hunger, that longing for a father. And that father may also be one that will notice her body. And he also will notice mother's body. And if she gains an ounce, now not all fathers are like this, so set boundaries. I'm not talking about every man in the audience. I'm talking about some fathers that they are body conscious about their wives' bodies, about their daughters' bodies, and they do not want them to gain an ounce. And little girls watch how their fathers treat their mothers about their weight. And if you don't think they do, you take time to talk with them about it. They'll tell you. We just think, oh well, that doesn't. They're not paying attention. They pay close attention. They watch you. I mean, you're an open book to them. The family has more influence on adolescents' eating disorders than all the other outlets that and there's a lot of them. Kids at school have an influence. The media has an influence, but the family has the most. But the good news is the family is the one that can help bring about a change. I want to tell you how that is. I've got to leave time that. Okay, so dramatic weight loss or failure to gain expected weight during a certain growth period. Denial of hunger. They deny that they're hungry and they'll start skipping meals. They wear baggy clothes to hide weight loss, even in hot summertime. I mean, that is a dead giveaway for an anorexic. Have gotten them in here where they come in, with the baggy clothes, baggy t-shirts. Then they'll have a long sleeve shirt on over that, and they'll have a cap on in July and August. Another thing is that their body heat goes way down. I'm talking about anorexics. Their body heat temperature goes way down, and they're cold a lot. They are freezing. But they wear the baggy clothes mainly to cover up their bodies because they think they're so fat, and they don't want people to see their bodies. They see this disease is between the two ears. So the health risk, of course, is malnutrition, heart problems. And we have had, in the 40 years that I've worked with eating disorder clients, we have had 2 to die of anorexia, and it was heart failure. They had the heart and the body of I want to say an 80 or 90-year-old person, and so anyway, their heart had aged and they died of heart problems. Low bone density, and their bones are very brittle, and their bones are as brittle as a 100-year-old woman's. Their menstrual cycles are irregular, or they don't have irregular. They have them, or they lose their period altogether. And the deal is the risk of death from starvation and our heart failure. And I want to say that heart failure again. And I want to tell you how important it is for the family to get some help. I want to tell you about the first anorexic I ever treated. I started the eating disorder unit at the Drug Alcohol Treatment Center in town. We were getting calls, long story short, I leased beds, kept it there for a year, and I got a call one day from this woman, and I recognized her name. They were very wealthy people in Abilene. I recognized, when she told me what her name was, I knew who she was. I knew from the newspaper, the society page, and all that was back when we even had a newspaper. So she had a grown daughter, and that she had anorexia for years. Long story short, she came in. She had a child's body. She looked like she was about a 3rd grader. Beautiful, but she was a skeleton, a absolute skeleton. It was a 28-day program. We recommended that she stay longer. They did. Now, we're talking about wealthy people. And what we charged at that time for 28 days for eating disorder treatment, you got it? $3,500. $3,500. And so we did get them to agree to 90 days. The woman needed to be somewhere for a year. They griped about the family fussed about the money. That's the only reason I wanted their daughter there was because of the money. I heard it was hard to do research back then. You had to go to the library, you had to get on the computer, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I found a psychiatrist in Pennsylvania that his primary practice was with anorexics. And he took one anorexic a year, because they were so hard to treat. He put them up, and I don't know where he housed them. I knew then, but I don't remember now. But it wasn't in a hospital setting; it was more in a residential setting. And he kept them for a year, and he worked with them every day, and he charged dearly for it. And he was phasing out the work with the one that he had been working with, and he had a waiting list. But I'm pretty persuasive, and I talked that doctor into taking our client, this client from Texas. I was thrilled. I couldn't do it without she signed the, this is a grown woman that we had, and she signed a release where I could even talk to the doctor. She agreed to it. She agreed to go. I had him talk to her, or had her talk to him. She was excited. She really wanted to go. We brought her mom and dad in. You probably know the rest of the story. They thought I was in cahoots with the psychiatrist, and all we wanted was their money. All we wanted was their money. They took that daughter home. She went home, and she would come to OA, Overeaters Anonymous, and she would gain a little bit of weight. And she was a school teacher, had never taught, but she got a job at teaching school. Long story short, she got worse and worse till they had to let her go at school because her weight was so compromised. She was at one of our grocery stores. It was at Albertsons. It's not even there now. Buying supposedly groceries. And she passed out in the aisles of the grocery store. They called the ambulance. And they looked at her basket, and it was full of those enemas, the fleet enemas, laxatives, diuretics, diet pills. Now, this is a woman that weighed maybe 60 pounds. They picked her up, took her by ambulance to the hospital. Her mother called me. Her mother did call me. And she had hated my guts. But anyway, I want to not drag this out. The woman died the next day. She died the next day. Now, it took her years to die from anorexia. That's the thing about eating disorders or any addiction. Sometimes it will not let you live, but it won't let you die. This woman lived years with anorexia. She had no life, but she breathed in and out and died weighing 60 pounds. And I could give you lots of tragic, but we've only had two, and she wasn't at Shades. We've only had two at Shades that died after they left here of heart failure. And they died, but for failure to treat their eating disorder. Okay, so bulimia. Bulimia involves a cycle of binge eating and followed by behavior to get rid of the food. You take in massive amounts of calories, and then you find a way to get rid of it. That fear of gaining weight. Majority of your bulimics have had some form of a weight problem and have found a way to lose it. Not all bulimics have had weight. Majority of them have a fear of getting overweight. Sometimes your anorexics will go from anorexia. You'll get them. They'll get on a food plan, and you'll get them up to or they will get up. We won't get them up to, but they will get up to a normal weight range. And then they're scared to death of gaining weight, but they're not going back into anorexia, and so they will get on will get within a normal weight range, and then they declare themselves well, and they quit doing anything. They quit seeing a therapist. They quit going to meetings. They declare themselves they're well because they've gained the weight. That is the starting gate. That is just the beginning of treatment to have a normal weight. The work happens after that. That mental and emotional side, that core pain must be worked on, And so what happens, they'll start out as anorexics. They get on the recovery track. They want to recover, and they will refeed themselves till they get within a normal weight range. And then they will get there, and then they will start maybe overeating a little bit. Because they've still got that hole in their soul, they've got that core pain, and so they will start using a little bit more food and a little bit more food, and then they have the biggest fear in the world of getting to be obese. So then they will go from being anorexic to practicing bulimia, because they get used to, they like the food, they like the taste of food, and anorexics will tell you they enjoy food, they like the taste of food, they like the volume of the food, but they like being thin more. And so they can restrict that food down, but it's not that they don't like food. Most of our anorexics do, and they are experts. They could be dietitians. They know everything. They've studied about food. So here they are gaining the weight back, and they will many times, go into bulimia for fear of going on to the other side. Now, we've had them to come back 5 years after recovery from anorexia, come back. We'll treat them for bulimia. 5 years later, they'll come back, and then they've gained up, and we treat them for obesity. So anyway, I've gone to preaching. Y'all get the idea. So bulimia is frequent trips to the bathroom after meals. Parents need to watch that. That is a big giveaway for a bulimic if they have to go to the bathroom. If they're in a restaurant, a lot of times your bulimics will not eat in restaurants. They'll say, oh, I've already eaten, or I'm not hungry, and they'll be starved and they'll want that food so bad, but they know they can't find a way to get rid of it. Or if the parents insist that they eat, they'll go ahead and eat, and they have to. There's just a short period of time there to get rid of the food, and so they have to get rid of it quick or they can't get it up. So they'll excuse themselves, go to the bathroom and purge. You go into, anyway, I won't go into that, but you can see evidence of it many times in public restrooms where bulimics have visited there. So the evidence of vomiting is swollen cheeks. We have gotten them in, the first couple of years we treated adolescents here, but I wouldn't treat an adolescent without the mother coming. But anyway, any bulimic, particularly your anorexics, will have your adolescents will have what we call chipmunk cheeks. These glands swell from the vomiting, and they'll have these little knots here, and they look like chipmunks. It's a dead giveaway for bulimics. And when you say something to them about it, they know that you know. They know that you know, because otherwise people won't say anything about these chipmunk face. So they'll get into the self-induced vomiting, laxative misuse. That was my drug of choice, was laxatives, and I got up to taking massive amounts of laxatives. And I hate to say this, my adolescent children were doing the same thing in the house. There was three of us practicing an eating disorder at the same time. You know, I had had surgery. I had lost a lot of weight. I had the bypass surgery at 72, almost killed me. I'd gained some of that weight back, but I didn't have treatment for an eating disorder. It was all about the weight. When I started that weight gain back, I started using laxatives, and then I started to a diet doctor in Lubbock. And the only conversation I would have with my two daughters was, because they knew where I kept my medicine, and I would go through the house. I mean, they would maybe be ready to leave for school, and I'd look at both of them, and I'd say, stay out of my bathroom and stay out of my stuff. And they knew I was not talking about my hairbrush. They knew what I was talking about. And I could not get them to stop. I would hide them, they would find them. I would hide them. So this goes on. We're not that unique and different. This goes on in a lot of eating disorder households where the mother has the eating disorder and then it's passed down to the children. Okay, so also bulimics will get into fasting. They will fast, they will restrict food, and then get so hungry, they feel like they failed at anorexia, and so they will fast, and then they get hungry, and then they will overeat, and then they get scared that they're going to gain weight, and then that's when they throw up and or take laxatives or excessive exercise to prevent weight gain. I'll tell you, my clients, early clients, taught me more about eating disorders than any professional that I ever sat under. When we first opened, we had a young man here that I thought we were going to treat him for drug addiction. I came into work one day, long story short, what he was doing, he would get up and he would slip out of the door. He was real thin. He was like my daughter, and we always contributed. Kim's extreme thinness was because of her drugs and alcohol, her addiction. And that's what we thought we were treating with this young man. Yes, he was a drug addict, but we contributed his weight loss to that. I came in one day, he was sitting in my office. They had brought him in there. They had found out, the night staff, had found out that he was slipping out of the dorm and running 20 miles a night. 20 miles all night long. He'd run all over this end of South Taylor County. And he was that big around. So I keep talking about girls. Boys have eating disorders also. Young men have eating disorders. Men have them. They are not recognized as much. I think that there's a high rate of eating disorders with men. There's just not, they're not, they don't give themselves permission to go to treatment as much because they consider it a female disease. And by the time they do get to treatment, a lot of times they are so advanced in, we've treated young men with eating disorders, and by the time they get to us, they are so advanced, they usually have to be in psych units, and maybe they'll be in psych units and they'll transfer them to us. But we're not talking about a small little behavioral problem. We're talking about a disease that is it's progressive, it is chronic, and it is fatal left untreated. It's a very progressive disease, and so this is why parents need to be aware of what their child is doing, and then do something, catch it as soon as you can. So other key signs of behaviors: eating large amounts of food in a short period of time. That's what bulimia is. Sometimes people will, by the time that they're making their own money, will do, in college, they'll take their money, and a good binge costs about $50 to $75. It probably costs more than that now because you take in massive amounts of food. The bigger the binge, the bigger the purge, the bigger the release. And what the bulimic is going for is the release, that feeling of sense of ease and comfort. The alcoholic gets it from drinking alcohol. The drug addict gets it from shooting up. The compulsive overeater they get more of a numbing. They're more like the alcoholics. They get the numbing of the pain. But for a bulimic, what they go for is the release of the purge. It's that, that is the most euphoric feeling, that empty feeling, once you get that food out. And then you look around in the bathroom. Adolescents will do this, and this is a good sign for parents to look for. If you're seeing a lot of towels coming through your laundry, that have something on them that's not, doesn't, I mean, it could be, bulimics make messes in the bathrooms, chronic messes. I mean, the commodes, check the commodes. That's how you can tell if you're living with a bulimic. Unless, now, as they get better, they clean that commode after every use. If they go visit someone, they will clean the commode because they do not want to leave anything back that will show where they are practicing their eating disorder. It's not a pretty disease. These are ugly, down and ugly diseases. Another thing is the teeth corrosion, dental corrosion for bulimics. They're much like their teeth will begin to rot out, much like your meth addicts. They will use diet pills, diuretics, laxatives, anything to get that food out of their body. And then they slip around and do a lot of secret eating. And then in the research, there was so little about compulsive overeating or obesity among the adolescents. There's very little that was there. But I could tell you a lot because what happens is usually something triggers, whether you're anorexic or bulimic or compulsive overeater. Something happens in childhood. It doesn't have to be anything great big, or it can be huge. It can be sexual abuse, or it can be something small. For instance, it can be kids get bullied at school, mean girls. Have y'all heard about the mean girls at school? And this may be a child that is sensitive, a sensitive child. All kids have some sensitivity, but let's say a very sensitive child. And that abuse from peers, that bullying and being left out and, being a part of the group one day and not a part of the group the other. And I will tell you how anorexia starts. Anorexia starts as very easy. It's not easy, but they start by restricting food. Like I said earlier, get on the scales and they think that they're fat. If they're 1 ounce, if they've gained a little weight, they'll think they're fat, and so they'll start restricting their food. That is the first indicator of anorexia. And they can be at a normal weight or they can be some overweight, but that is the first indicator. Weighing all the time. And then it'll show up in the kitchen, it'll show up around the dinner table where they stop eating, or they're not hungry when dinner is served, or they will take their food and throw it away. Maybe they're cooking hamburgers, the family's having, sandwiches or hamburgers. They'll take it, fix it, make it look real pretty, and then when the family's not looking, they'll throw it in the trash. A lot of thrown away food. And so that's your anorexic. And then your bulimic will eat you out of house and home. A bulimic, and particularly your adolescent bulimics, where they don't have their own money, And so they'll eat your stash. They will eat everything they can get their hands on, particularly whole boxes of cereal. They will eat whole boxes of cereal and can eat a half a gallon of milk. That is nothing for a bulimic, to eat a half a gallon of milk and a box of cereal, because you eat it, you eat it, you eat it, you eat it, and then immediately have to purge it out. And that's why bulimics love for their parents to go out of town. They love to be alone, have an afternoon alone or a Sunday afternoon. It's hard to practice bulimia. And so it's, parents pay attention of these signs and symptoms, because there is a starting point, and then there's a middle, and then there's a chronic stage. But start looking at the beginning. Now, once what we have, and I want to get into what you can do about it. We were taught early on to separate, like if you've got a chronic adolescent with anorexia or bulimia, you to put them into inpatient treatment. Well, you start with outpatient, always start with outpatient, and then if they fail outpatient, then put them in inpatient treatment. And then if they go to an adolescent inpatient treatment, and I am not putting down treatment centers, do not hear that. We've ran one for 38 years, so I'm not putting down treatment centers. And if parents of adolescents can be more conscious about what their child is doing, they can help on the front end of the eating disorder. And there is something you can do, like we were taught early on in the eating disorder field, is to separate the family from the client, because it starts in the family, and you've got to work with the client to get them, refed, and some of that I agree with, but I have shifted my way of thinking. And I can't give you the name of the book and I can't find it, but it's a book that, anyway, it is a new approach, and we have used it with clients. And I will tell you, and I've got permission with this one family, I'm not going to give you their names, but I have several that I could give you. Now, this takes what we have seen the most successful. And Lord God Almighty, I wished we had known it 38 years ago, because it's a simple approach, but the parents have got to be willing to be involved. So what the process is, you bring in, and we had, I'll say this, I want to talk about a couple. They had one daughter. She was severe anorexic. She was really good at sports. Her weight got so compromised, they would not allow her to play sports at school. She was a star at school. She couldn't play sports. And so at that time, we wasn't treating adolescents. And these people knew me from previous years ago and knew the type of work we did, and they literally begged us to do something. So I developed a 4-day for them, and Kim, my daughter, and I worked with that couple, those parents and the adolescent, just that one family, and we brought them in, and we spent 4 days with them. And what you do is you teach the family, the parents, to take charge of the food. And this was so contradictory to the way that we were taught early on. But who better to help a child than a parent who loves the child more than anyone on the face of the earth? So you've got to get the parents engaged. And, both these parents worked, and what we recommend is you take the kid out of school. You take her out of school and homeschool her. Do not send her back to school, because that weight is compromised. We have got to keep the energy. And she has to have somebody with her every minute of every day. But we talked with the girl before we brought the parents in and told her what our plan was, and she started crying. And what she said is anorexia to the T. What she said was, "You mean they are seeing me?" Did you hear me? They see me. They finally see me. And I was asking Kim, I said, "What did you get out of being anorexia?" She looked at me, she said, "Well, attention. That's all the reason we do it is for attention." And that's what that young girl said. They're seeing me. And she was crying. And she was so excited that not only was her mother there, mothers will show up. I mean, most mothers will show up regardless of or no matter what. Dads, not so much. But this mom and dad both showed up. And for 4 days, they showed up. And I want to tell you, we sent them to lunch. And with every time they went out for a meal, we gave them a different assignment. And what we saw by the end of the first day is that daughter had complete charge of the food, where they ate, where they sat in the restaurant, what the menu was. They would even stop, and we teach people how to treat us. I taught my husband this. He wouldn't have dared picked out a restaurant. He drove up and he said, "Will you go in and see if you can find anything to eat?" I mean, we take complete charge of everything. And this young girl had. She had taught her parents, hands off the food, I'm in charge here. So they came back 2.5 hours later, had not eaten a bite because they couldn't find the right restaurant that she would eat in. So you know what the main symptom of anorexia is? Have y'all got it yet? It's called the big C. It's called control. And parents have got to take the control back. What that adolescent is begging for is, see what I'm doing. See me. Help me. But they will do everything in the world to be so mean and hateful. There is nothing more hateful than an anorexic teenager. And they are strong and they can. I've only been beat up twice. And I've worked with Vietnam vets. I have worked with a hitman from the mafia. I've worked with some bad people. The only 2 times I've been beat up in this field was by 80-pound anorexics. I'm just glad they didn't get a hold of me at the same time, or I wouldn't be here. They have so much energy on the inside and so much rage. And once that rage is tapped in, it's going to go to the one that is sitting there. If you say no, you're going to get the rage. But what people do with anorexics, because they're so pitiful and they're cute, precious, and darling, and they just look so pitiful because they're so thin, and people walk on eggshells around them. They control the family. They control the other children in the family. They control the animals, the grandparents, the teachers through the disease. Now, they don't want to do this, but that's the only way that they know to be heard. So for this family, what we gave them was this directive. And I said, if you do this, you're going to see changes. If you don't, you're going to lose your daughter. She is going to die. I would not recommend putting her in an adolescent unit, because if you want an adolescent to learn more ways to practice an eating disorder, put them in an adolescent eating disorder unit. That's all they do, sit around and brag, kind of like drug addicts do when they're in treatment, particularly in detox. They brag about their, that's what anorexics or people with eating disorders will do. Now, not your compulsive overeaters, they don't. So what the directive was with this family, and we laid it out, real clear. We said, homeschool her, withdraw her from school tomorrow, if you're willing to help your daughter get well. Take a leave of absence, either both of you or at least one of you. What other family do you have in your area that you could engage in helping? and they happen to have retired grandparents. I said, call them while you're here. See if you can get them on board. So by the time they left, they had a whole group of people that, a whole group, 4 or 5, that was willing to participate in this young girl's healing. And so the plan was that she would not be left alone 1 minute for the first 30 days. And meals would be prepared. And we gave them a menu. We told them exactly, and told them the scale. And some therapists, eating disorder people are against weighing and measuring. I don't care what they're against. It works. It works. Do what works. If something else works, do that. But anorexics want to know exactly what they're eating. They have that right. They have that right. So, we gave them a food plan. We told them to get scales, and we told them how to, how much to start, because so many eating disorder units want to refeed an anorexic so fast that can cause heart failure. They'll kick those calories up to 3,600 calories, and so you've got to build that up. You start them out and you gradually, so we gave them exact what to do. And we told them, Kim is so good at this, she said, call me every day. Call me every day. They did. And they got the grandparents involved. And the daughter agreed to it. She had no choice. It was either an adolescent psychiatric center or do this. And so I want to tell you, they did it for 1 year. 1 year. That young woman went back to school. She became the star that she was qualified to be. She went to college. She went to school on sports scholarships. That young woman would have died had her parents not taken the directive. And what that anorexic wants is to be seen. See me. See me. So you must work with the family. And if they decide to do this process, it's not just about the mother because of that mother-daughter struggle. The father needs to sit down. They need to sit down, eat every meal with her, and then do activities. We laid it all out for them, and they did it. She's well today. She's well. People can get well. Now, they'll have a tendency to have eating disorders the rest of their lives, but they can get well. Another one. And her and her mom were going to be on here today, and they, for whatever reason, can't be. But you can see their story. That we're going to put their story. It's a 16-minute video of what they got here, how they implemented what they got here, and how that daughter is today. And I watched it yesterday, and I could not watch it Missy and I both were crying because that mother and that dad and that client's sisters took our recommendations, and they followed every recommendation. And that young woman is off to college in September. She's off to college, a normal weight. She graduated from high school. She goes out and speaks. She helps others. But it started with that family. And I'll tell you, it was hard. And they took a cut in pay. There was a lot that they had to give up. But what are we willing to give up for our children's health? So I don't know that all parents can do that, but if I had my way, that's how we would treat adolescents' eating disorders. And then you take, I was an overweight little girl, a preteen, a teenager, a young adult, an old adult, and all that. Not once, and I want you to hear this, not once, ever in my career of overeating and eating myself up to almost 300 pounds, not once did anyone ever do an intervention. Not once did anyone say, You need help. Can I help you? Let's find some help for you. My heart breaks for you. Let me help you find some help. And took me under their wing. No one. You know why they don't with the compulsive overeater and the morbidly obese? Why do they not say anything? They do not want to hurt our feelings. Our feelings need to be hurt. They need to be hurt. We need to hear what our body has become, because at almost 300 pounds, I was full of shame. Now, people will say things like little kids will say fatty, fatty too before, or I'd walk down the mall and some little kid would say, why are you so fat? I mean, I remember all of them. People will say things to you about your weight. They'll say things to overweight people that they wouldn't dare say to a normal weight or to an anorexic. They would not say a word to them other than bless her heart. You know, a little thin anorexic, bless her heart. What can we do for her? Overweight people can die of the disease and no one will ever. I think they're afraid to say anything, afraid they're going to catch it. I think they're afraid to get too close to obese people, afraid that it'll rub off on them. That is where it has a high, you know the statistics, and I will tell you, had that shot come out, now I'll tell you, that first shot that came out, of Ozempic, is that it?
I think so.
I think, and Bradley is much smarter about meds than I am, but I think from the research that I've seen, it is probably one of the most near perfect drugs that they've ever come out with. It was not designed for weight loss. It was to treat diabetes. And what they saw in the process of treating someone's diabetes was the weight loss. And I'll tell you, I don't know, and I should have done the research, I don't know if surely they are offering it to teenagers. I hope that they are offering the shot or the new meds to teenagers. And I hope they're not getting just the meds that is treating the symptom. They need to get down and treat the causes and conditions. So it's an inside job. You've got to get to that core and work on the core pain. And families need to do their own work. Families must do their own work, because majority of your eating disorder children are the message barriers. They are carrying a message out into the world that says, my family needs help. My family needs help. And the ones that get the most attention and that will get the help are the anorexics and the bulimics. But the bulimic has to get very ill before they really see the danger, how dangerous the disease is. The anorexics gets the attention because it scares people that when they see their child withering away every day in front of their eyes. But let's don't forget these over here that are absolutely dying themselves through obesity and bulimia. And then there's so many different types of eating disorders today that adolescents are practicing. One of them, and I hate to even put it out there, but they know it, is that chewing and spitting, because they do not want to gain weight. They want to be slim and cute like their friends and, their cheerleaders. They're all trying to stay the same size and all. And so but they love food. They love the taste of food. So they will slip around and they will eat. They'll chew, but they won't swallow the food and they'll spit it out. But eventually they swallow enough to start the weight gain. And when that weight gain starts, then that's when they'll either start restricting or the binge purge or gain the weight. So, what we're talking about is dangerous illnesses. They're diseases. They're not anything people choose to do. It starts with something has happened, and it could be something small. I'm going to tell you this quick story that is very true. This fireman, uh, wife, 3 children, good life. They live in a ranch style home. They had 3 bedrooms. They had a son, 2 daughters. They had a teenage daughter, and then a daughter that was about 11 or 12. They shared a bedroom. The mother worked, the dad worked. They were just a good family, church goers. I mean, all American family, all American family. One day, this man didn't have a lot of relatives. He had one aunt, and she was very wealthy, and she died, and everything, all of her money went to him like that. They went from being just, paycheck to paycheck to being very wealthy. First thing they wanted to do was build a new house, and they built a fine one. Huge 2-story house upstairs on one end, because the older daughter was about to, get in high, leave for college. She still had a couple of years at school, but her bedroom was upstairs at one end of the hall. The young one was at the other end. For the first time in that young girl's life, she was not with her sister, her older sister. She slept with her older sister in the room. She was involved in her sister's friends. She was like their little mascot. She'd gotten a lot of attention through the years, and to the point that she hadn't really cultivated a lot of friends her age. So one was on one end, the other one was on the other end. And what that young girl started doing, she said that she started not eating. She just wanted to see what would happen if she didn't eat. And she didn't eat for about 3 meals. No one noticed. No one noticed because they were busy. They had that new house, new life. And then so she kept on until she lost enough weight that they noticed. And they were shocked. They could not figure out why. So I'm saying all this to say there's usually something, some mental and emotional side, something that triggers their way of thinking, that triggers the starvation or the overeating or the binging and purging. It doesn't have to be anything real big, but it can be. It can be sexual abuse, it can be physical abuse, it can be any form of abuse. And it can be something that small is feeling left out and not a part of. And what these families, the 2 families that I talked about, and we have others with these that I talked about, we were talking to one of the mothers yesterday, and she said what they did was those family weeks. We teach people to do family weeks here, where they go home. It's a 30-minute process. They go around and talk about feelings. And she said their sheets of paper where they'd used them so much that they were worn thin. I love to hear that. Because they followed directions. Instead of these kids learning about food and how many calories is in something, what they need to be talked with about and taught is how to feel and what their feelings are, and allow space inside your home for those children's feelings, where they feel safe enough to come and talk about their feelings. And you have a family meeting every week, and that's not about problem solving. It is about teaching kids it's okay to have feelings. And this family has done that. They've followed every direction, these families that I'm talking about, and we have had others. But this process works. And what it kept these young women from doing is having to go to inpatient treatment. Some have to go, and some need to stay 6 months to a year if they get in that chronic stage. So I didn't leave any time for any talking. I spent all my time talking. It is a subject that needs to be talked about quickly, does anybody have a comment or question or
I
anything?
got